Hello, welcome to my channel. I have a flip through of two traveler's notebooks that I made. I'm calling these layered traveler's notebooks, and I'll show you in a minute why. We'll do this one first. What I tried to do with these was I tried to add different size of papers in them and pack them with some uh, different options for journaling. So on this one, I've left the flap unglued, so you could glue that down or not. You could use it for in many different ways if you wanted to do things, or you could just put some glue on either end and have yourself a pocket. So we'll go through these, and I've used designer papers and lots of ephemera or vintage papers. I've clipped in scraps of vintage papers that you could use throughout the journal for your journaling. Vintage children's book, some green stamps, an old ledger page, some more vintage paper, piece of map, book page, designer paper. This is a fabric cluster, and it's just clipped in so you can move it around. Old dictionary page, old page out of a book about birds. So you see these different layers, different, I don't know, I guess layers is the best word for it. A little, out of an old garden book, illustrated garden book, made a little tag. This is a used to get film in like the 70s, and it came in these little bags. So put one of them in there. Some more paper, a little bit of lace on this one. A cluster, little tag. This is from a vintage garden book, from a vintage how to type book. Some old letterhead. This is some pressed paper. This is from an old book on stenciling. Notepad, a couple stamps. This is out of a 50s magazine, out of a garden book, out of a little bird book, some designer digital paper, little scraps. This is out of a children's activity book, out of another workman, like 1950s book. So yeah, lots of different layers. I thought that would be fun to journal in a cluster by adding the different levels. This is the center. You know, I'm going to have to count how many pages. I don't always count all the little pages. It depends on how substantial they are. So I'll have to count and see how many pages it is. I know that the designer papers and the big papers came to at least 20, but I know there's a lot more in here because these are kind of stuffed. Another fabric cluster, and this is an old ledger, from an old ledger book, one of the dividers. Another cluster. If it is stapled in, like this one is stapled in, it's real easy to just open the staples and move it if you want to move it. I just love these different layers. I think this is cool. Another cluster. A little bit of map, little designer paper. Another cluster. This is the other part of that bag. You can close it up, or you can use it, put things in it. Another cluster. Bunch of layers here. Some more scrap paper. More scrap paper, a little bit of lace. And this is might even be 40s greeting card. I showed you the front. It's folded over, and that's the front of it. It's a birthday blessings card. And then the back, and it doesn't have any area for a pocket. Then the next one, which is pretty much the same as this one, just different papers used. This one I think has the pocket in the back. So another vintage greeting card in the front. Vintage papers from a vintage magazine on birds. 50s envelope. Old dictionary page. A cluster from that activities book. Then I have different punches in here. The badge punch. Different layers. I'm going to make more of these. I love these layers. A fabric cluster. And all of my clusters, the fabric clusters, all vintage fabric, vintage buttons. A lot of the other little clusters, most of the stuff in the clusters is vintage stuff. Garden book, flower cut out, made into a tag. So a lot of this stuff in the cluster, vintage map, from a vintage ledger, from an old wedding dress. So a lot of the stuff in the clusters is vintage too. Old magazine, some green stamps. So everything, I think all the paper is vintage except for the designer digital paper. So all these papers are vintage designer paper. Different. And a doily and an old envelope. And this is from a embroidery book. And this is from I think it's another kind of embroidery book. Another cluster made of ephemera stuff, old stamps, and old map piece. So I think it'd be a lot of fun to journal in. And it's sewn in, but you can cut the strings and you can move it around if you want and re-sew it. The holes will be there. A fabric cluster. I just started making fabric clusters. They're so much fun. You'll see a lot more of those in my stuff now. Good way to use up little fabric pieces and lace pieces. Another cluster, that's from a vintage magazine, and that's from an old game piece. So let me know if you like these layers in here, these different sizes, different, to me, I think it would make journaling, oops, I hope I was in frame for the bottom of this. Oh, I'm going to have to look at the end here. Anyways, not, I'll do it again. A bird tag from this old book and cut it out and made a tag out of it. The back of that card. And then here's on this one, it's the flap that you can glue down here if you want or not. So there you go. There's my new Traveler's Notebooks, and I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you for watching.